What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Welcome back to the Respawn, where I answer your questions. Today, we're specifically going to be talking about what's going to happen with Overwatch 2. First up, do you think they'll keep the endorsement system for Overwatch 2? No, not the way that we currently have it. In fact, I believe one of the devs for Overwatch actually said that they were making changes because it didn't really quite do what they wanted it to. And really, it was a good idea initially, and for a short amount of time after they released the endorsement system, people were trying to be a little more helpful and friendly with the teamwork and all that sort of stuff, but it just kind of dropped off, and nobody really cared about it because there was no actual penalty for having low endorsement. Like, it didn't matter, and really, the only rewards you got were a couple of loot boxes once a month, and that's just not good enough. So, nobody really cares about it. It's a way to just get free experience after your match, and that's about it. So the way that we currently have it, I do not see that happening with Overwatch 2, but there might be a different system that is going to replace it. But no, I don't see the current system carrying over. Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark, one of the world's leading VPNs. Protecting yourself online is getting more important every day, and Surfshark provides some of the best security available with high-level encryption and a multi-hop system allowing connections to 2 servers for extra protection. Surfshark has a very strict no-logs policy which guarantees your privacy online. Now, with so many people spending more time at home, one of Surfshark's best features is the ability to access region-locked streaming content anywhere in the world. Surfshark gives you access to dozens of streaming libraries including Netflix, Disney Plus, and more. This allows you to view content that might be blocked in your area but is available somewhere else. Surfshark also has great 24/7 support and a 30-day money-back guarantee, meaning you have nothing to risk when you try it out. And starting November 1st, you can take advantage of a great offer using code BLAMETC or my link down below to get 84% off and 4 months free. But the offer is only good for a limited time, so click the link down below and try it out. Next up, how many reworks do you expect for Overwatch 2? I think there's going to be a lot, but not all of them are going to be full reworks. There might just be partial reworks like Winston, where you just get an extra ability. But if we're talking full rework characters, I think Orisa, Sigma, Bastion, Doomfist, Sombra, Symmetra, Torbjorn, and maybe Baptiste, and Junkrat might get... I don't know if he's going to get like a full rework or a partial rework, but I think there's going to be a lot of changes for those characters, and some of the other ones might get smaller changes or partial reworks, but I think there's going to be more than a few characters that are going to get full reworks. And speaking of those reworks, what will a tank Doomfist look like? So for those that don't know, Blizzard has talked about moving Doomfist into the tank role because they don't want DPS characters to have CC anymore, but tank characters are going to be allowed to have it. So they had a choice: either they completely remove his abilities and change all of the stuff around, or they can move him into the tank role, and they would probably end up having to change a lot less about the characters, and that seems what they're more intended to do. Also, keep in mind that in Overwatch 2, the tank characters are going to be more like bruisers, more like Roadhog, where they kind of focus more on dealing damage and just have a little bit of protection or sustainability for themselves, as opposed to being able to completely defend your entire team, right? Like, it's more like a fat DPS with lots of health, and that's kind of what Doomfist is going to be when they move him into the tank role. Now, he's still going to have some of that CC, but I would expect that they're going to lessen it a little bit. I think a lot of his abilities are going to remain the same, but they're going to have some different effects added to it. And you might see something like, instead of just giving himself that little bit of extra health whenever he uses his abilities, maybe he ends up giving that little bit of extra health to some of his teammates that are in the area, or something to that effect. But I do think, for the most part, his abilities are going to look the same. It's just that they're going to end up doing slightly different things. And speaking of CC, do you feel getting rid of CC for 70% of the heroes was a good idea? For the most part, yeah, it's going to speed up the game, and it might make it a little bit less frustrating in some situations. Although, in fairness, a lot of people that complain about CC are greatly exaggerating about how long they get stun-locked. It is literally not possible to get stun-locked in Overwatch. The most you're ever going to be stunned is maybe 2 seconds, and then you're just going to get eliminated anyways, so that's not a stun lock. But regardless, there always will need to be some amount of CC in the game, the stuns and slows, because then you have characters like Tracer and Doomfist and Hammond and Genji, who would just be way too powerful if you don't have the ability to stop them or slow them down. So CC is always going to be required just by the very nature of the game. But for the most part, yeah, I think it's probably going to be a better game overall when you remove a lot of the CC. Next up, do you think an Overwatch 2 hero built around decoys and overhealing would work? Decoys, not so much, because a lot of the maps in Overwatch are very linear. The defenders know where you're coming from. There are lots of choke points and confined spaces, and the decoys just aren't going to be all that effective in a lot of places. As for the overhealing, it could work, but I'm not really sure, because one of the nerfs that Brigitte got for the repair pack was to remove the overhealing. Now, granted, that was specifically armor overhealing, and if it was just normal overhealth, like what they're doing with Overwatch 2, that might be a different situation. But the main reason why they got rid of that was because you had a lot of people whining and complaining that Tracer had too much health with the repair pack. So imagine you have another support character that gives lots of overhealth, then you might have people complaining about Tracer having too much health again because of the constant overhealing and that sort of thing. So, I mean, both of those things, the decoys and the overhealing, could work, but I see there being a lot of problems with both. Next up, do you think some of the DPS characters will become supports for Overwatch 2? No, I don't think so. The two main choices were going to be Sombra and Symmetra. With Sombra, we know that she's been reworked into even more of a DPS character. With Symmetra, they already tried that with the shields and the barriers and all that sort of stuff, and it didn't work at all. It was absolutely terrible. So unless they did a complete rework of Symmetra, and they gave her some kind of healing abilities in place of some of the stuff she has now, I just don't see any of the characters getting moved into support. And speaking of that character, what can be done to make Symmetra less situational for Overwatch 2? At a minimum, she's going to need a partial rework, probably a full rework. Just a lot of the things about the character simply do not work in regular gameplay. A lot of it is just gimmicky, whether you're on defense and you're setting up the mini-sentries, or you're using the teleporter to try to take a shortcut to get to the capture point if you're attacking. All of this stuff is just gimmicky and situational, and often the best use for the teleporter is to just leave it outside your spawn room, which is just not good for a character to have. You're basically just adding a passive to your team that says, hey, get to the capture point 2 seconds, 3 seconds faster, and then you just waste an ability on that. And that's just not a good thing for the character to have. You want to have abilities that can be used on a regular basis throughout the match. And having stuff like the teleporter and the mini-sentries, which often just tend to be a nuisance more than anything else, they're just not good. Also, she doesn't have very reliable or consistent damage, and her ultimate simply does not belong on a DPS character. Her ultimate belongs more on a support character, and just her whole kit is awful. Everything about the character is terrible, and they need to either drastically change how some of the existing stuff works, or just give her new abilities, because as it is now, the character is just terrible and situational, and it's not, you're not going to be able to just change some numbers and lower cooldowns in order to change that. You're going to need to change the abilities in order for her to be less situational. Next up, what do you think Blizzard should add in the training room for Overwatch 2? They need to add everything, because the current training room is garbage, and it is not useful really in almost any way. It is just some weird thing where you can run around and attack some of the bots, but it doesn't work. So there are so many different workshop codes that are far, far better than anything you'll find in the training room. So really what they need to do is completely redesign the training room and add the stuff that you actually need for training your reflexes and your aim and all that sort of stuff. And they just need to make a proper training room. There are tons and tons of examples, not only in the workshop, but in other games like CSGO and all that sort of stuff. And really, just get rid of what they currently have and make something that is actually useful would be the #1 suggestion for the training room. That's going to be all the questions for this one. Thank you to everyone who submitted one. If you have a question that you'd like to see on the Respawn, there's going to be a question card posted on the community section of my YouTube channel, and there'll be a link for that down below. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. And remember, always, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.